Hello, this is Fate Shuck. I am one of the authors of Knitting is Witchcraft, and my co author, Larisa Hunter, is not with me today, but I wanted to get into a little bit about who I am, why I wrote the book, and a little bit about my spiritual practice with the divine. So, my name is Fate Shuck. Shuck means underhill or goblin in Middle English, and that was the name of my great grandmother. So that was her maiden name. So as a pen name, I picked Fate and Shuck. And I hope if you know me personally, you respect that those are the names that I'm using. I also use they, she pronouns. My gender is fairly fluid and I don't ascribe to gender binary, but I understand that as humans, we like to put things in neat little boxes and have something to call someone. So if you feel inclined to call me anything, please call other than my name, please use she, they pronouns, and a mixture of those is more than okay. Knitting is Witchcraft is my debut book, and it is a book about the correlation between knitting, witchcraft, magic, and paganism. It revolves around a lot about my personal gnosis, so personal intuitive witchcraft, and as well as my experience as a knitter for the past 16 or 17 years. With that being said, I am by no means an expert. If we go based on hours learned, I've definitely put in my 5,000 hours, and it takes 5,000 hours to become an expert in something, but I've definitely done my 5,000 hours. And but expert also implies a sense of professionalism and colonize, and there's a colonized behavior of making money through our hobbies. Side hustles are huge, and I like to keep this as a hobby. I like to give the gifts, my knitting away as gifts, and I like to, if I do monetize my abilities, it's through my abilities to teach a technical skill versus me making something for someone. So that's a little bit about that. The book came to me when I was researching witchcraft, which I've been doing since I was 9 years old. It's part of my practice. I think of myself more as a folkloric intuitive witch. I rely heavily on ancestral veneration. I come from master weavers, and we lost a lot of our culture when we moved to Canada and the US. I know more about my grandmother on my mother's side. So my grandmother is her family is Czechoslovakian and Ukrainian, and so I know more about them than I do my grandfather's side, which was Appalachian. So through that, I do a lot of ancestral veneration. I do a lot of petitions, and I look into Orthodoxy and Catholicism to help me understand some of the gaps in the reconstructionism of my faith and culture. I am part of the Slavic diaspora. My family came over during the genocide in Ukraine, and we were able to have land in Saskatchewan. And so when we came here, only my great grandmother and great great grandmother spoke Ukrainian or Czechoslovakian, and we have since lost all contact with our family in the old country. But fret not, through private investigators and ancestry genealogy, I have learned quite a bit about my family and reconstructing some of those teachings. I'm learning to spin and process wool. I'm learning to trust my art and intuition. There's a lot to say when it comes to intuition. Like, you can do all the reading in the world, and your intuition is still going to be your best bet, your gut feeling, right? If it smells like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's probably a duck. But if your gut's telling you it's not a duck gut, get group conscious. And if they all confirm that it's not a duck, then don't stop believing that it's not a duck. So I started knitting when I was 14 years old due to the fact I was going through a tumultuous time. I was experiencing a lot of mental health issues. And my friend was like, "Hey, this is really going to help you." And so they taught me how to knit. And it's a practice I've maintained my whole life. I teach knitting for wellness recovery. So people who are neurodivergent, people with mental health problems, and addictions recovery. I teach it for mental wellness, and that's kind of where I got the inspiration for the book. Um, I started realizing that wands and support spindles look a lot alike. So knitting needles, wands, and support spindles and distaffs for spinning look very, very similar. And I was kind of getting this idea that maybe there was a correlation. Maybe there was something to fiber arts and witchcraft. So with the help of my handy dandy publisher at Three Little Sisters Publishing, I got in contact with Larissa and we started spitballing a book. Now, a lot of in the book where I come into play is the intuitive uh, guiding for witchcraft studies as well as the knitting, most of the knitting patterns. Larissa did all the hard, arduous research work, and I'm so ecstatic and thankful for that because I am really bad at remembering where I learned things and doing direct quotations, and she streamlined the process. So when we take our two needles and we start knitting, not only we're knitting with intention, but we're creating something from nothing. We're creating, whether we're spinning, crocheting, we're creating from a jumble of like a mess, like you're taking chaos and you're making it into something manageable. You're making it into something wearable and 3D. Um, and I think that's absolutely beautiful. Even if it's a project like a scarf that you think is two-dimensional, it's still very much in the here and now. And I believe it's a three-dimensional piece because it's wearable. So, what is magic but the creation and foundations of taking your life and weaving fate? And there's a reason why it's called weaving fate, right? The threads of fate are spun by those with um with ambiguity, right? Um Spiders, arachne, right? They spin webs and they weave the world between the webs. And I think that's beautiful. And we do the same thing by taking our needles, taking our crochet hook, making these knots, making these woven projects. When we take two needles and we make our loops, when we take three needles and we make our loops, depending on what you're working on. When we take our crochet hook and we make our knots, there's an equal amount of knot magic in there too. And thread magic has been around for eons. Everyone had to wear clothes, to keep us protected from the elements. So some of the first magic and protection spells were woven into the clothes. Now, we may not have direct proof of this, but because of the animistic nature of pre-colonial persons and persons of ancient times, we can assume that there was some metaphysical components to their clothing. And we see this a lot in warrior clothing. So, clothing like chainmail and such might have runic symbols or other metaphysical based symbols to invoke certain attributes of the gods. So we can get into fiber as a magic. So fiber in itself is magical. It imbues the item with the characteristics of the animal that you're using or if you're using man-made products, if you're more cyber or techie, you can plan radio frequencies, right? I like the natural frequencies that each fiber upholds, and you can imbue with them. You can use oils and sprays, and you can use um, incense and smoke, and you can use intention and prayer and chanting and meditation to imbue your project into something rather beautiful and sacred. There's a sacredness to slow fashion. And I think that is our divine right and ancestral right to fiber and to protect ourselves through clothing. We not only are we showing our internal emotions through what we wear, but we're showing our internal creativity and thought through what we create through what we wear. So when we have intentional clothing and clothing that's slow fashion, we create this magical moment of intention and spell work. So for me, how I connect with the divine through knitting or crochet or weaving or spinning is I usually light a candle and I talk to my ancestors. And I let my ancestors guide me. So I use a lot of intuition on how to make projects, and sometimes it comes at a detriment because I forget to write down how I made the project. And then I have to go back and rework it so that way my publisher knows what I'm doing. And that can be frustrating for some people because I'm very much an in my head, do it as I go kind of artist. And for some people who want to recreate what I have, that's just not that's just not something that they can do because I don't have active notes and thoughts and feelings that are written down. So sometimes when I knit, I go into a meditation, I put on music or an audiobook, and I try to uplift myself as much as possible. Um, I personally don't do baneful magic with my knitting, but you're more than able to do any type of baneful work or work in regards to healing and health, protection, however you want to do your workings. It's all possible with knitting because knitting is very much a transcendental practice. But I don't do baneful work with it because if I'm going to take 120 hours to make something, uh, I don't want to give it to someone I hate. Not that we, hate a lot of people, but sometimes we hate the actions just like the person, right? We try to have compassion as much as possible. I think it's important to say that I am not a love and light kind of witch. I am the kind of witch that you know what's best for you and you understand what you need to do to keep yourself safe and sane in the magical realm. And if you need guidance, I hope that you would look for it in someone um, who knows about arcane and magical teachings in a way that um, feels good to you. So, some things about magic that you might not know is magic is based in the animistic traditions where everything is spirit and energy and has divine properties. So when I think of animism, I think of the fact that energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be created. And everything has energy. Everything is made up of atoms. And we can see that on a molecular level, right? And we know this to be a fact. So when our ancient and previous ancestors came to these conclusions, they they were smarter than we like to give them credit, right? They knew that everything had this wonderful wonderful energy and ability to be um, turned into other things without losing its original properties. And I think that's beautiful. And in for them, it was more spiritual than the scientific fact that I have. But I like to mix science and spirituality. I think, you know, knitting is very much a technical skill, right? You need maths, you need dexterity, you need not necessarily vision, but you need to have tactileness and forward thinking and the ability to problem solve. And that takes time, effort, and energy in the beginning. So I think that to be able to put a spiritual and scientific spin on it because you're doing creative in kind of a sciencey way, or a mathematical way, your ability to create is just endless. One of the things I love about knitting is how repetitive and meditative it is. Every time I do it, I am reminded of the cycles of life, how we're born and we're born and we die and rebirth. And that's like the seasons and everything is born again, lives, dies, is reborn. And I think that's beautiful. Like you can live, you can believe in a more esoteric thing like reincarnation or rebirth, or you can believe in the fact that when we are no longer, we become one with the earth, right? We decompose. So I think that's really beautiful and something that I work on. When you work with ancestors, um, death becomes a friendly reminder that nothing is permanent and everything changes. And that is beautiful because you're never going to be stuck in a bad situation forever. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you would be interested in purchasing a pre-order of my book, or if you are a shop, if you could stock my book in your knitting shop, your yarn shop, or your booksellers. You can email general at three little sisters llc.com, and then or you can contact me, Fate Shuck, or Three Little Sisters Publishing. You can expect to see pre-orders going on sale this Friday, September 12th, 2025. Again, please take a moment to comment, like, subscribe, and I will be bringing more videos like this to you in the near future.